And another environmental roundtable. To my left, to your right, Fred Thiele, Jay Schneiderman. I did see Legislator Hahn here someplace. Oh, we have a whole plethora of officials.
Almost have a quorum of the county legislature.
Starting with Al Krupski, Legislator Krupski, our Regional Director of DEC, Peter Scully, our host supervisor, Sean Walter, Legislator Anker, Sarah Anker. I can't see who's...
John Rassmiller.
John, how did you...
How did you get into the politician's ghetto?
No one else would have us except this guy.
John. And I think that's...
Scott Russell's there.
Scott? Scott, a few opening remarks by myself. We have been, a lot of people around the table have been busy working on issues to preserve our surface and groundwater. And we have held a number of meetings so that, and I've said to all the people who are here, we don't have to get into a debate discussion on that because we have been meeting beginning in the summer all the way up until this week. So, been active in that regard. Also, and I hope we can discuss to see if anyone has any feelings on the mute swan issue. Something that I feel, Peter, would you say passionately?
Senator, only you know best how you feel.
Great answer. That is a great answer.
And he hasn't been mute about it.
This is your forum. We need to hear from you about what is important so that we can develop our agenda for this session 2014. And I would say, without any qualification, water preservation is number one on the list. Right?
Thank you, Senator. And first of all, just thank you for again taking the lead. I don't know how many of these forums we've had, but we've had them for a long time, and they've always been productive. They lead to legislative proposals and ideas that in many cases ultimately become law. Also, be mindful of the fact that in Albany we are in the midst of the budget process. The governor has released his budget. Of course, there are a number of proposals, one way or another, that affect the environment. And right now the legislature is in the process of holding hearings on that budget, but I am willing to go out on a limb and predict that we will probably have our fourth on-time budget sometime before April 1st. So if there's any input or issues that are budgetary in nature, and I'm mindful of the fact that one of our town supervisors, Ed Romaine, who frequently comes here, maybe he'll be here later, but he says all decisions of government are decisions of money. Well, I don't know if all of them are, but a lot of them are. And certainly we're looking at issues with regard to the Environmental Protection Fund and a whole host of other funding decisions with regard to the DEC. So any comments on that certainly are welcome also. Thank you.
We usually start, and then the other elected officials kind of, as we move along, speak up and identify things that they're working on or what's important to them. But we usually start with Peter Scully, the state of our DEC here on Long Island.
I would just observe that since the last time we met, 2013, despite the crush of Sandy-related work at DEC, saw some very important wins, I think. The governor's signing of the law expanding the Pine Barrens to include the Carmen's River watershed, which you two were so instrumental in seeing through the legislature, I think was an important win for us, and resulted in approval of the Carmen's River plan, which appeared for all purposes to be dead a year ago. An important win for us, I think. I think Supervisor Walter would characterize as a win the governor's signature of the law which created a commission to guide development at EPCAL. I'll leave that to him to discuss. We also saw tremendous progress, I think, in the dialogue of the need to enhance protection of groundwater and surface water, and as the Senator said, there's a lot of work going on. Perhaps we won't discuss that so much tonight, but that dialogue is ongoing, and it's progressed, I think, significantly since a year ago. Thanks in large part to the efforts of the elected officials here and some of the NGOs, Kevin and Dick and Adrian in particular, I think. I also have to put in a little bit of a plug for the governor's budget, because from DEC's standpoint has some important components. He has proposed a $4 million increase in the Environmental Protection Fund, and I'm sure there'll be some folks suggesting that the increase should be more, but nonetheless, not only held it at $153 million, but proposed an increase. He has proposed reforms to the brownfields bill. There are a lot of constituents here who are interested in that, but important legislation offered by the governor to bolster that and continue to fund the Superfund program. We have a new public access initiative statewide. The governor is really trying to utilize tourism and the state's natural resources as a lure to help with the state's economy, particularly in upstate, but statewide, opening New York State's lands to public for hunting and fishing and other uses is a priority. $6 million would come to DEC for 50 new public access projects. 4 of those are on Long Island. We'll likely announce those later in the year. And finally, on the water issue, the governor included $2 million for research and development and pilot projects to reduce nitrogen and pathogen loading from septic systems and cesspool effluent as part of a partnership between DEC and Suffolk County. We'll be trying to flesh out how that's going to work in the months ahead. We are facing significant wildlife issues on Long Island. I'll just touch on a couple briefly because others will mention them. The deer population, as I predicted at my first environmental roundtable 10 years ago, has become an increasingly important issue, especially on the East End, and that's in the headlines every day. As many of you know, DEC released a draft mute swine management plan that's getting a lot of attention also. My initial reaction to it was to be a little bit puzzled because I wasn't aware of the science, but as it turns out, this is a recommendation, this plan, if you haven't read it, you should read the entire document, I guess. It's recommended by scientists. The New York State is one of a number of states that's part of the Atlantic Flyways Council, and they have all recommended, as a group, the wildlife managers and professionals from all of those states, on a scientific basis, controlling the population of this species. That group set a goal in 2003 of reducing the population of the mute swan in New York State to 500 birds by 2013. That has not happened. There's a plan out there. There's a public comment period. The purpose of the public comment period is to hear what people have to say. I venture a guess that if DEC receives enough comments suggesting that the plan as proposed needs to be amended, those comments will be taken into consideration. If you have something to say about that, be sure that you generate comments and get them to DEC by February 21st. I'll look forward to the dialogue tonight. If anybody has an issue that they need to discuss with me separately that doesn't warrant time at the table, please be sure to grab me after the meeting, or else call or email. I'll try and help you as best I can.
I've done this for everybody else, and you're the last one. This is the town of Riverhead's Gold Watch. This doesn't mean you're retired, but we gave one to Fred Thiele at the last East End Supervisors Association. You see, for a long time, Senator LaValle and a lot of people have been trying to get EPCAL subdivided, and Senator LaValle and Fred Thiele, who Fred can't even get a vote out of Riverhead, came up with some legislation that not only helps protect EPCAL. About 60% of EPCAL will be preserved forever, and about 600 acres will be developed. And so Senator LaValle passed some legislation in the Senate, and Assemblyman Thiele passed some legislation in the Assembly that really helps us kickstart the development at EPCAL in an environmentally sensitive fashion. We've worked with the DEC, but the Senator has been such a leader in this, so this is, I mean, I joke around, but this is our gold watch. We usually give it to people that retire. But we want to give it to you in sincere recognition of the work that you've done, and thank you very much. And we will develop EPCAL in an environmental sense.
One of the things that I say all the time is that we do things environmentally here. We have the most creative people, and we get things done. We get things done. People have said, you'll never pass that, you'll never do that. And there were a lot of people at this table that were involved in helping the supervisor and the town of Riverhead and Fred and I be successful on this. So you can do environment and economic development side by side. It just takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work and compromise and people trusting one another to get the job done. And we've got, the list just grows. So congratulations, Supervisor.
Thank you.
All right, now it's your meeting.
Just a couple things of interest, I think. One, I've been talking to our state representatives here over the past year about more water testing for the East End. The state does the water sampling and testing for shellfish certification. And in South Old Town, they've been very active about sampling and getting the samples to the state. The state's been very good about testing the samples, and as a result, we've got more underwater lands open for shellfishing, which I guess I should let the supervisor talk about. So, I meant something about goose management. I don't know if Mr. Scully's going to address that later, and how the Canadian geese population are affecting the quality of our surface waters and groundwaters because they're so overpopulated, and if in fact the state has a plan to work with everyone to reduce that population. Well, we did call when we heard about the DEC's management plan for the mute swan. We said, well, we should call New York State Audubon Society, and because we should have our office should have an answer for the public when they call. And they said they were absolutely in favor of the DEC's management plan. So, and then
Doesn't make it right.
well, it's another opinion on a subject. So, and then the senator referenced $2 million in state aid to the county for alternative septic systems, and that's very important. The work that we're doing, and there's a lot of county legislators here that will speak to that also. That we're working on alternative systems for the East End, where you're not going to be able to sewer the East End. You don't want to sewer it, and this gives a chance to treat the wastewater going instead of mainlining into the ground like we've been doing. So we really appreciate that kind of support because we need to get projects in the ground to test them and to make them, get the health department to approve them. So thank you for that.
So there's just about a couple things here on my list. Senator, the jetty in Mount Sinai, we're having issues trying to get funding for that jetty. It's about a $6 million fund, and we're hoping to get it through Sandy Fund. So if there's any way you can help expedite that jetty, because the county cannot dredge Mount Sinai Harbor until that jetty is fixed. So I've been working with Edward Main and Jay Bonner to try to move that forward. Another issue, of course, on the North Shore is erosion. We met with a number of private communities that have shorefront property, and it's amazing to see some of these homes just sliding off the cliff. They're down, they're on the beach. And it's not only dangerous for people living on the cliffs, it's dangerous for the people on the beach. So that's something I'd like maybe to work more with you to address this in one swoop, because you have these little communities trying to tackle this issue themselves, and there's just not much leverage. So if we could all get together on the same page, I think that would be great with erosion on the North Shore. And of course, water quality, our entire legislature is working on many, many projects. And in Caroline, we have our environmental chair here. But again, in partnership with all levels of government, especially with land acquisition, and focusing on those parcels that are most important for, water quality along the shores. We had a pretty involved presentation by Sarah Lansdale, our planning department chair, and showing they prioritize those areas that the county will focus on, and I believe she's got it down to about 30,000 to start. Yeah, I think there's 200,000 homes that are high density, and they need to address their septics because it's going to be a problem for our water. Those are some important issues, and again, I appreciate you allowing so many of us that have the environment in the forefront of our priority list here today. So thanks.
The first words out of Senator LaValle's mouth was 2014, and I thought maybe he was counting the number of people in the room. Because it just seems every time I come, it's more and more people. It's growing and growing. That's great to see. People said during the recession that maybe the environment would take a back seat. That didn't happen thanks to the people in this room and many others who really have fought passionately and made so much progress on so many issues. I'm here really to listen. We get ideas, whether it's at the state level, at the county level, or the local level for environmental initiatives from people like you. Some of the things that have interested me in the past and continue to, areas where I think we can do better. Garbage. Nobody wants to talk trash, but I think it really is one of those sleeping environmental issues. We produce way too much waste. We recycle way too little. We spend a lot of fossil fuels, carting and non-renewable resources, carting the garbage. I think 100 million tons or something like that. Peter Scully probably knows the amount, but a tremendous amount of waste we're producing and shipping to other states to be landfilled, and that's really a environmental atrocity. So we got to do a better job there, reusing, recycling, figuring out what to do with the waste we produce. Another issue, the county runs the mosquito control program. We continue to put a chemical called methoprene into our estuaries. I remain concerned about the impact it has on marine invertebrates, lobsters and crabs, and I've tried to put some common sense restrictions. I've made no progress there, but had a lot of support from people. But we should, if people want to join with me on this issue, I think it's an important issue. Also in the pesticide world, we're still using way too many pesticides, putting things on lawns to make them perfectly green, endocrine disruptors, neurotoxins, suspected carcinogens, reproductive toxins. So we have to do, I think, a much better job in reducing the amount of toxins we're introducing, particularly for cosmetic, aesthetic types of purposes. If anybody has anything to share on those issues, I'd love to hear. But mostly whatever you want to talk about, I'm certainly here to listen.
Really, the number one issue on everyone's mind for the number of years I've come as a legislator has been water quality protection, drinking water particularly, but our basin waterways as well. Civilizations throughout history have learned some very hard lessons when they didn't get their sewage treatment right. We have about 1 million individuals in 350,000 homes who are not sewered, sitting over an aquifer that we drink from. So, we really have to do much, much, much better, and we are way behind, and we all know that. So that $2 million fund that we discussed, we are so incredibly thankful for. We are matching that. We would also match $4 million. We would match $6 million. So if you would like to triple that amount, we are willing to match that. It is, our county executive has made this his number one issue right now, and hopefully for the long haul. And so we really, I think we would triple that money if you could match it for us. And because the reality is so, our need is so great, and we are not going to be able to sewer 350, nor would we want to, as Legislator Krupski said, 350,000 homes. And so we've prioritized. We just had heard from the comp plan. We have ideas for how to really narrow that down and focus to start. in a way, but we need to have that research, we need to have the pilot programs, we need to get them in the ground now, so that what we are doing is cleaning the water before it goes into the aquifer. So that's just the real priority for us. And again, anything you can do to help us to be able to curb, whether it's allowing us to surcharge, allowing bans on the residential, some of the residential fertilizers and pesticides, et cetera, that would be extraordinarily helpful. But we do need to find much ways to get incredibly more revenue for these water quality
I
issues.
think the county executive has really taken a leadership role within the county on this issue. And I think that's really a good thing because it poises our county to be creative, and wherever we can find a nexus to Sandy, and we need to improve certain things so it doesn't happen again, we can access those Sandy dollars. So we can actually increase the 2 million to a number far greater. And it's just building relationships to, if we took an action that it would help us, for instance, whether it be Bergen Point or someplace else. In my district and Fred's district, think about what we could do with the Forge River and that whole area and the mastics that could probably use some sewering, you know. There's some areas that don't, you know, that's an evil word. So the problem is so big that you need to go to those parts of the county where people are willing to find a solution and would welcome the money.
And there are many that
Yes.
want it, would welcome it, we can start there.
Right.
We just have to get them going.
Okay. Supervisor Russ?
County is finally starting to look at alternative treatment systems, allowing us to at least implement some of that. That's all very important stuff, water quality. But we have a real issue in Suffolk Town that I think we need to put to the top of the list of priorities. It's a crisis, and that is white-tailed deer infestation in Suffolk and in other communities. It is probably the single biggest economic, environmental, and public health crisis we're facing right now. There's many environmentalists that are sitting in this room this evening. I know some of you have already weighed in, but I need all of you to make this a top priority. I think sitting passively by is doing a disservice to the environment. We've had wildlife biologists out in Suffolk talk about the devastation to the ecosystems. We have farmers coming forward talking about the economic losses. We have the public health crisis in tick-borne illness, and we need to take an active approach. I realize there are some unpleasant options that are on the table, but we need to take a hard look at this and do something about it now, not later. And I'm just going to ask you all to consider that. I do want to thank you and Assemblyman Thiele for proposing legislation that will ease hunting restrictions. I think that'll down the road, it'll be a critical component to deer management, but we need to bring the numbers down now so that we can get them to manageable levels so that hunters can do their job.
We have our newly elected assembly member from Southold Town, beginning in Southold, coming up into Brookhaven. Assemblyman Anthony Palumbo is with us for his first meeting. Okay. Dick, I always pick on you first because you always provoke discussion. You're a good catalyst.
I'm a little frightened because I'm hearing about the deer and the geese and the swan, all of these environmental critters, and the solution, as I understand it, is to just kill them. And I just want to say, as an environmentalist, we don't want to fall into the category as well. You'll have to find some other way to get rid of us.
Give me any ideas.
It's been tried, Adrian.
There are people taking notes, Nick. I don't want to get you nervous.
The only thing I want to say tonight is, for those of you who have not been actively involved in this forum before, is that the issue of dealing with groundwater, both surface water and drinking water, started right here. And they're doing something about it. So whatever it is that is your concern, don't hesitate to put it on the table, because these people are seriously listening and they do make a difference. That's all.
Havasick is actually, we talk about the budget, and the Pine Barrens Commission will be something that we as legislators from Long Island will be focused on to make sure that he has the fiscal resources to properly operate the Pine Barrens Commission. So,
Thank you very much, Senator. We greatly appreciate that sentiment and support. I just wanted to touch base with you and the folks here about commission activities ongoing and those that have occurred over the past year. You heard Peter Scully speak previously about the Carmen's River, so we're working closely with the town of Brookhaven to now implement the expanded area of both the core preservation area and the compatible growth area. The commission in December had passed a resolution which was complementary to that process, and we're proceeding throughout the year to work again closely with the town on that. One of the things we are working on is in regard to stewardship in the Carmen's River corridor is a proposed trail corridor, that portion of which would be named after the late Ray Corwin, who we also honored during the past year, particularly with legislator Krupski's assistance. We renamed the Trail Center in Manville County Trail Center after Ray. But one of the things we're looking to do is to establish a trail corridor in the Upper Carmen's River watershed area, primarily in the area known as Warbler Woods. Has one of the highest concentrations of those rare bird species, and unfortunately that area is being severely impacted by a number of illegal uses, all-terrain vehicles, four-wheel drives, arson fires, dumping, and so forth. So we're hoping to muster resources both on the public level and also from NGOs to assist us in addressing the issues there long-term. And then want to talk to you about the comprehensive land use plan, which was adopted initially in 1995. We have been in a process, has been ongoing for a number of years now, to amend the plan. This is a process that actually began in 2005, and we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. The Commission has diligently moved through a review of chapters 4, 5, and 6, which are the land use chapters. They've looked at such things as developments of regional significance, water quality, clearing, open space, and conservation design, wildfire hazard mitigation, and scenic and cultural resources, as well as some refinements to the Pine Barrens Credit Program. So we're hoping to wrap that process up by about the middle of the summer, with the Commission advancing and ultimately adopting a set of those proposed amendments. In addition, we're actively working in regard to wildfire prevention and response. As folks know, in April of 2012, we experienced a very severe wildfire, again reminiscent of the Sunrise Fires of 1995. So we're working diligently to try to address areas of both not only response but prevention. So the Commission has engaged in a multi-pronged approach, which includes significant community outreach and meetings, spreading the word on fireways programs. These are ways of actually fireproofing properties or mitigating potential fire damage to properties. And our folks in the office are actually going out into various communities and meeting with a number of the local townships as well. The Commission is also looking at a wildfire hazard mitigation standard proposal, which would help to address future development and ensure that those future development would be less prone to impacts of wildfires. Also looking at, again, advancing and increasing prescribed fire. We're also working with the local National Guard units to do more helicopter and water bucket training. We're also advancing our weather fire forecasting and noticing. And we've done a lot, if you may have read, with our New York Wildfire and Incident Management Academy, which is actually a branch of the commission. We've done, last year we did our inaugural spring training event. We had quite a few volunteer firefighters attend. Last fall we had an inaugural brush truck training course that was well attended by local firefighters. It had a classroom component as well as a field component, and the firefighters really welcome that because they don't get any opportunity to normally practice using brush trucks and responding until the fire actually occurs. So we're looking to have another one this spring, about mid-March. So I'd ask folks, if you know if you could spread the word about that, please do so, and encourage volunteer fire departments that have brush trucks to participate in that. Also, we are actively engaged in ecological management. A number of years ago, the Commission asked that we really focus on on-the-ground stewardship. So last year, the Commission entered into a 5-year aggressive, comprehensive ecological services contract that, again, is multi-pronged. It would look at doing ecological inventories, assessment, monitoring, and management plans, advancing prescribed fire, engaging in invasive species restoration and grassland restoration. So we're going through the first phase right now, finishing up a proposed scope of work, and hopefully we'll be starting on some on-the-ground work later this year. In addition, we've done a significant amount of work in regard to education and outreach. Folks may have heard about some groundbreaking programs we had with our office, one of which was a day in the life of the Carmen's River. That has been such a success that engages students, local students at the secondary school level, meeting with professionals from Brookhaven Lab, Cornell, and other entities, working together to do actual student science, collecting water and biota samples, and doing other kinds of ecological monitoring. It's a one-day program, one day in the fall. Great success last year, and we're looking to also advance it this year to the Peconic Estuary as well. And with that said, I'll be here for a little bit longer, unfortunately. Well, fortunately, I guess. It's my anniversary, so I'm going to have to leave here tonight a little bit early, so I apologize.
That unfortunate part was just recorded.
Please don't tell my wife. I'm hoping to get another 27 years in. So I will be, if folks have any questions for me, folks know how to reach me at the office, and on our website we have our phone numbers, so please feel free to contact us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, do you have any questions for John now?
The Pine Barrens Act was good.
It's for any department, because when there's a big event, departments come from all over Suffolk County and the island to participate. Was that training for anyone?
It's for anyone. We've actually, it's any Long Island Fire Department. And actually, as the name says, it's the New York Wildfire and Incident Management Academy. So if there's even an upstate department that's interested, we will provide that training to them. And we have had a Nassau County department express interest in the course. And we've had a number of fire departments from outside the Central Pine Barrens who have participated.
You know, obviously, I think we've come a long way with recognition of the nutrient inputs to our groundwater and conveyance into surface waters. So that's an extremely positive thing. Couple items with respect to the state of New York. They're now promulgating numeric standards, which are very important, both for freshwater and surface waters, or coastal waters, excuse me. Right now, the state of New York, up in Albany, DEC, has done a tremendous amount of scientific work to really define what levels of nutrients can be assimilated nitrogen into receiving streams. So that's ready to go. It's defensible. I really feel that the state's a bit behind the curve relative to our neighboring states in, again, bringing forward these numeric standards as mandated by EPA. So any help on that front would be appreciated, because I think we really have to hinge to science, identifying what is a healthy stream, what is a healthy coastal water body, and really backwork from there. Secondarily, on the same vein, talking about sewage treatment plants. And I want to say that's not necessarily a panacea, and I will say this much. We're trying to raise the bar relative to sewage treatment based on litigation, and litigation against the state of New York. Hopefully, we'll get a favorable ruling which will in fact raise the bar. But I'm here to tell you, through the analysis that we have done over several years, the performance levels of sewage treatment is quite questionable. There's serious failures on thousands of systems, either inadequate regulatory standards, discharge standards on these, performance standards. It goes across the board. So when we talk about sewering, let's be clear about, again, performance. And to Al's comments, you know, it's all about the loadings that are going into a water body, whether it be a stream or a coastal embayment. So to put it a simple analogy, you know, sewering on face value has performance and denitrification capability. But let's say at a level of 100, you know, we're achieving our goal. But ultimately, if it becomes 1,000, the loads will be increased and will negate the benefit of sewering. So we have to be very careful about where we are placing our sewer systems. Massac Beach, of course, is a perfect candidate because it's already built out. But we start getting into outlying areas, that could be very problematic. You build it, they will come. Relative to Legislator Schneiderman's comments on methaprene, I will tell you my work and information gathering over the last 10 years on methaprene, it is bad news. It's still in use by Suffolk County. Assemblyman Thiele has tried to bring forward bills to address it. I will say the state of New York, the Department of Environmental Conservation, restricts its use on state-managed wetlands. So why is Suffolk County Department of Public Works given free rein over the application of this? State of Connecticut, Rhode Island, they've come to terms with it. They are putting serious and severe restrictions on its use. I think we've got to get on board with this at a state level. Legislator Schneiderman, I will help to the greatest extent possible. And lastly, coastal resilience. Obviously with Sandy and just sea level rise, the New York State Sea Level Rise Task Force that convened several years ago concluded with some findings that are certainly substantiated by other world-renowned studies and academic institutions. You know, we are going to have to deal with it. We're dealing with it right now, as we've seen. So ultimately, we have to be very thoughtful about our coastal development. I will say, half of the equation is water quality. The other half is fringing habitats. And if in fact we're unable or unwilling, particularly with our planning and development schemes, to make these adjustments, we are going to lose those fringing habitats, and that water can be pristine, but we're going to kill these bays, we're going to kill our streams if we can't, again, have that transition zones that are so critically important. Thank you.
There are areas that cry out for sewering. There are other areas that do not, and people are not there yet. I think your comment, build it and they will come, and that's part of the reason why people don't want any part of it. But I would say to the towns in particular that, and I want to use Southold Town as an example. Scott Russell has a tremendous person who one day said, you know, I don't agree with the numbers that the state is coming up with, and was able to have a conversation with the state. And that's a good thing. Dialogue and discussion and debate is critically important. So it goes to, and I think we're very fortunate here in Suffolk County, that people have gone out of their way to get very well-qualified people. And that's why Fred and I have been very successful, because we have top-quality people who feed us data, ideas on how to deal with something, the do's and the
A
don'ts.
lot of talk about water, and all for good reason, but maybe it's the time of evening, I'm going to talk a little bit about food. Especially since we're not going to be fed. I want to really focus actually on a very important part of the trust mission. Our mission is to conserve Long Island's working farms, natural lands, and our heritage. And these days, it's probably for us the future of our working farms that we ourselves are most concerned about, especially given the escalating value of protected farmland, especially on the South Fork. We're looking at values 100,000 per acre or more. All of us in this room are the beneficiaries of over 15,000 acres of protected farmland, due in part to Suffolk County's first in the nation purchase of development rights program. Brought to us by Senator LaValle, County Executive John Klein, the farming community, and the Long Island Farm Bureau. But our efforts to protect farmland in the business of farming are falling short because the current tools are just not adequate. So the efforts and resources of those of us who care about agriculture in all of its forms, including local food, we must really work together, recognizing the strengths and limitations of the public sector, the nonprofit sector, and the private sector. The agricultural community itself must be forefront in this process. So we need to understand and adapt what other states and other land trusts are doing to assure a future for agriculture here, because we do need to eat. So some of this will require changes in public policy at all levels, including the state. More capital to acquire additional restrictions on farmland from farmland owners on a voluntary basis, such as the option to purchase at agricultural value. We need incentives and rewards for others who are willing to self-restrict. But fundamentally, we also need to know what a vital role land trusts can play in working with the public sector in this regard. So we're already doing it. Indeed, I see ourselves as the canary in the coal mine, not only for Long Island, but for the rest of New York State. We're anxious to do more, and we look forward to working with our public partners to do more. But not to leave the water issue out here. I do want to make a comment on behalf of Karen Rivara, and an exciting small study. Hopefully I'm not stealing any thunder from you, Vito, on this.
There's plenty of thunder.
Plenty of plenty of thunder. Basically, a very small project that we have, we're about to embark on, is really funded in part by the Nowonk Agriculture Cooperative, which is housed at our Shellfisher Preserve in Southold, a great hatchery that was saved from becoming a marina and condominium complex many years ago. And National Grid Foundation, we're going to do a small project where we will be sampling groundwater entering the estuary from 2 to 3 sites to prove the sampling protocol and technology. So we'll be sampling groundwater flow and nitrogen. This is a pilot project to prove the technology, which could be further used in a larger study to sample groundwater for nitrogen coming into the estuary to determine which sites need the most mitigation and determine if mitigation is successful.
Trying to design basically and draft enhanced agricultural easements that not just protect the land but also promote the growing of food and the use of land for agriculture. You know, out of that, we've developed an outline, I think, at least for the use of the town of Southampton, which I think they're proceeding with. You know, the other side of that is, you know, we're going to look at, you know, for those types of easements, if we can come up with legislation that might, to encourage that, come up with the kind of tax incentives that are necessary. This is the perfect time to be looking at those kinds of things for agriculture because well, the first governor, Cuomo, once said that in politics that if you don't blow your own horn, there is no music. I'm going to talk about the Community Preservation Fund, but it had basically the second biggest year it ever had in 2013, except in the town of Southampton, where it had the biggest year it ever had. And that means that there are, you know, revenues available to be able to do these kinds of programs. So I think it's a good time to be able to proceed. Especially, you know, one good thing about the Community Preservation Fund is that as development goes up, so does the resources for community development, for community preservation. So even though agriculture and its use for farming may be under increased stress, I mean, it's also generating resources that if we are creative, that we can do something about it. The last thing I just wanted to mention, because you didn't, one of the things that is part of the budget, one of the things that you've talked about in previous years has been the punitive effect of the estate tax on both agriculture and land preservation. And Senator LaValle and I had put in a bill to increase the exemption from $1 million to $5 million a couple of years ago, and I'm pleased that that proposal and more is in the governor's budget. He would increase it to 5.25, which is about the federal level now, but it also would reduce the maximum rate from 16% to 10%. So hopefully that will go through. I think that will help local agriculture also.
We've had meetings on Supervisor Anna Throne-Holtz and Town Board in Southampton, you know, have been part of those discussions with Fred and I, and so it's on a pathway.
Talk about CPF, but Riverhead's in a financial disaster with CPF. We did everything everyone asked us to do. We bonded $70 million, and I'm telling everybody in the room right now, the general fund of the town of Riverhead in 2017 will be paying back the CPF debt. The News Review ran an article last week, and it showed that Riverhead, I think we just barely beat out Shelter Island in the amount of CPF that we took in, but we did what you all asked, and we're suffering, and now we're going to be coming, the town general fund's already behind 8%. You know, we're going to be coming back to you guys to figure out where we're getting the money from, because, I mean, I won't let the town default, but that's where we are. We are not taking in more money. We've got a revenue stream of about $2.5 million a year and a debt service of about 5.8, 5.9. We're in trouble, bad. So we'll be coming to see you soon.
So it's something we have to discuss.
Can't let the evening go on without at least mentioning the Environmental Protection Fund. We are grateful that it's up about $4 million in the governor's budget, but we have some suggestions for more. And they're good suggestions for here on Long Island. The first thing I want to mention is safe disposal of pharmaceutical drugs. But not for residential, but rather for hospitals and hospices and long-term care facilities. As you may know, we surveyed long-term care facilities here in Suffolk County, and we also did it in Westchester County. And then, due to Legislator Carol Hahn's leadership, we worked to have a workshop and a roundtable with hospitals and long-term care facilities and hospices, and we asked them, what do you do with the unwanted and unneeded and or expired drugs, and what can we do to help you do it differently? So some of them are flushing, okay, but many of them are also using the DEA program, the Drug Enforcement Agency, twice per year throughout New York State. Will pick them up for free and bring them to an incinerator. The facilities told us, you know, New York City has a program for the New York State, DEC, has a program for the New York City watershed. And, okay, well, anyway, New York State has a program that they use for the New York City watershed, where they pick them up twice per year for free. And we think that Long Island's watershed should be offered the same protection as New York City's watershed. So if New York State DEC, whose program is lauded by those areas that use them, and I don't get to say that often enough, Mr. Scully, it's a very successful program where the drugs are picked up at the facility and brought to an incinerator. They do it on the every quarter, so twice a year the DEA does it, and then during the off times, the New York State does it. We want New York State to expand that program to not only include New York City, but to include other areas throughout the state that have sensitive water supplies, like Long Island. So we've asked you to kindly consider, we've done memos on this, your offices in Albany have received those memos, expanding those programs to include such areas as Long Island. And again, that's not an idea that we thought of, to be honest. That came directly from the facilities that would use them and need them. And it would stop the flushing of these unwanted drugs and having them get into our water supplies. The second thing I want to mention, very important, is the issue of pesticides. You may know this, but unfortunately, there's a proposal out right now to stop the reporting of the pesticides as they are being applied by zip code. You may or may not know, but there is a pesticide reporting law in New York State. Pesticides are reported according to how much is applied per 9-digit zip code. The new proposal is to only report what is applied by county. That's useless data. It's useful data to understand the application by zip code. It's useless data to know what we're applying by county. The reason and the impetus, and you will remember this, and I guess half the room will remember this, and the other half won't, they're too young. But the reason that that the pesticide law passed was so we could overlay the incidence of disease by the use of the pesticide in those small increments. And the DEC is telling us, well, the data is not being used. So if the data is not being used, let's figure out why it is. Let's not throw it out and then provide some useless data. It doesn't make sense to us. So we're going to ask for your help and your insight and your leadership on fixing that, what we feel is a failed proposal. And the last thing for the EPF, going back to the EPF, is we do definitely need funding for monitoring of toxic tides. You know it better than most people. Red tide, brown tide, rust tide, blue-green tide. We got the whole rainbow here, but we have to monitor them. It's pretty darn serious to make sure that we're not exposing the public to the shellfish or anything else that comes up. So we do need to maintain and expand that monitoring program, and we can definitely do that through the Environmental Protection Fund. Thank you again.
Senator LaValle, I have a saying, and it goes like this. I like my neighbor very much, but I don't want my neighbor's medications in my drinking water. And I think that's a reasonable position to take. You were kind enough earlier this summer to meet with me one-on-one and allow me to go over a draft of some legislation. I tried my hand at that. I've been trying to move forward with that. I've met one-on-one with Assemblyman Fred Thiele and also with Assemblyman Joseph Saladino. I have not been able to get a meeting with the chairman of the Environmental Conservation Committee in the Assembly, Robert Sweeney. I hope that you and Fred Thiele would perhaps take a close look at that legislation, because that would solve the disposal.
Why don't you tell everyone what it is?
The legislation?
Yeah.
The problem with disposing of medications is a funding problem. And even though there is federal legislation which exists without adequate regulations at this point, the federal regulations say that, or the federal legislation says that retail pharmacies would be able to accept unwanted, unused, expired medications. But those pharmacies are private businesses, and so there has to be an incentive. Now, the legislation concept that I propose is that there be a pharmaceutical disposal fee paid for by the pharmaceutical manufacturer. Now, that concept comes under the theory of product stewardship, that if the manufacturer produces the product, if there's any unused portion at the end of its life, the manufacturer should have some responsibility, perhaps all of the responsibility, for making sure that their product does not contaminate the environment. Now, without going into too many numbers, I'll just say this. Prescription sales, or the sales of prescription drugs in New York State is $18 billion. And that is second only to California with $25 billion per year in prescription drug sales. So what the legislation that I'm proposing is that a fee be collected at the point of sale, the equivalent of 1/10 of 1% of the sale. Now, 1/10 of 1% on a $10 sale is 1 penny. On a $100 sale, it's 10 cents. And on $18 billion, it's $18 million. Now, who gets that money? How will that money be dispersed? Well, my legislation proposal is that $18 million would be divided by the number of retail pharmacies who participate voluntarily in taking back drugs from people who want to dispose of them and responsibly.
You might want to talk to some of the other people here that would sit down and get there, since they've been involved in legislation, to see whether you're on a good track or not. One of the most important adages in political life is that you have to get your idea in a soundbite. So your legislation, you have to be able to explain it in literally 2 or 3 sentences that are not run-on sentences.
Just to bring you up to date, I'm at the School of Marine and Atmospheric Sciences at Stony Brook, and we're very busy educating your children and training the next generation of environmental leaders for this island and the state. Just some highlights of the year since last year.
No, brown tide, not highlights.
Brown tides are here to stay. We've got a problem with brown tides, but we're spending a lot of time and money in Shinnecock Bay, seeing what we can do to clean that up. We have our brilliant new Marine Sciences building facility on the Southampton campus. I want to thank you both, Senator Assemblymen, for your undying efforts to keep that going and to make that improvement. So we have, with your help, we have this new research institute called New York Rise. That is a collaboration between Stony Brook and New York University, a state-funded initiative to study the effects of extreme storm events and how we can prevent that in the future and how we can protect ourselves from that. So we're very active in climate change, rising sea levels, and coastal protection measures. We're interacting closely with Fire Island National Seashore and the Army Corps of Engineers about the new, so-called New Old Inlet in Great South Bay. That seems to be stable. The water quality has improved markedly within the bay, and the tidal action seems to be about the same. We have new teaching programs in coastal risk management. I was pleased, Senator, to hear you use the word protection rather than just resilience. Resilience to me is a word that really makes me shudder. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. There's a lot of human misery out there still from Hurricane Sandy, below the news radar, and people struggling. That's all I have to say, except about the dare problem. Why don't we think about a new industry here? of growing deer for human consumption. I mean, venison is very much better for you than beef. We may have to educate the public about this, but there could be a huge export market to Europe. So we could solve that problem and introduce a new industry to the island at the same time.
We all talk about the water, and I thank everyone. Thank you for the meeting tonight. Thank you for all that everyone does. But in Southampton, there's a 400-acre parcel that many of my favorite environmentalists here and legislators have been working to protect. It's the Hills Project, and 400 acres in East Quogue. The developers keep increasing the size of the development on those acreage. It's at one of the key points in the area for protecting the aquifer. The town has tried to purchase it, can't go beyond, as many of you know, can't go beyond, I think it's 5 or 10% over the appraised value. However, with some creative thinking, with some collaboration, with some funding from different sources, perhaps there's some way that this can be protected. I would appreciate anything that all of you together can do to come up with a plan to do that. Thank you.
Biggest unprotected pine barren parcel left.
Biggest unprotected pine, you heard it from the source. Biggest unprotected pine barren.
No, it doesn't have to grant it to them.
It's a PDD, however, it has passed the first hurdle, which is a little frightening. It had passed the pre-application hurdle. There was, wasn't there was a meeting last night that suddenly from the 89 houses in the golf course, it is morphing into 119, 120 houses and a golf course and a restaurant and whatever. We're talking in this case about developers that are very well funded from their side and or potentially well funded, and looking at a potential windfall if they can get it approved. So whatever we can do to protect it, I think, could be worthwhile.
The range of topics that you cover at this event is really amazing. I hope you don't mind if I bring us back into the home for the moment and talk about an environmental issue that affects human health, and that is the issue of carbon monoxide exposures in the home. The issue really came to light about 20 years ago when a tennis player died in the town of Southampton, Venus Gerulaitis, and people become more aware that you could die in your sleep from a carbon monoxide exposure that you would never smell, never see. As a result of that, there's state laws, including Amanda's law, that requires every home to have a carbon monoxide detector, which is a good law. Some indications are it's perhaps not really being enforced. But really, the education about that issue and that law has served its main purpose of saving people's lives. And my point today, though, is the part that's missing, which is that the design of carbon monoxide detectors is to tell you when there's a level that could kill you in your sleep. So it's over 70 parts per million, thereabouts. But what that doesn't tell you is when you have an exposure that's subacute, that could be causing you to be sick, walking around with recurring headaches, severe migraines in many cases, dizziness, nausea, a lot of things that may be misdiagnosed as flu-like symptoms, particularly this time of year when your heating system is on. So what we feel is there's a need for technology to catch up with this problem, that the detectors that are in the homes have a number of problems with them. They tend not to last too many years. If they do go off once or twice, they usually need to be replaced at that point. So we think the issue of looking at the detectors and having it so that perhaps there's a light that tells you there's a subacute level of exposure, and then the alarm when there's the higher level would be a change in the law that would be good. We also think when the repair people come to your home to work on your stove, if you have a gas stove, or your heating system, they should be required to do a test at that time. The reason we learned about this is because of the Green Jobs, Green New York program that was funded through the state to encourage homeowners to get free home energy audits. And I've been working for 3 years now with part of a program called Long Island Green Homes, where we have a consortium of towns that are working with NYSERDA to get the word out, encourage people to get these home energy audits. And what we're finding at our meetings is reports of a surprisingly high number of homes that have a significant level of carbon monoxide in them, although not at the level that would trigger the alarms. So the device that's designed to protect you is saving your life, but it may also be giving you a false sense of security that you're safe from being made sick, and that your home can in fact be making you sick, and you never know it. One way to find out is to have the home energy audit. So we are encouraging people to get their home energy audits. Based on our interviews with the people that do the audits, we estimate that about 1 in 3 of all the homes on Long Island that have natural gas may have this level of carbon monoxide leak that can result in illness. That's perhaps 150,000 homes on Long Island that can be making people sick.
What about oil heat?
Oil heat also has the concern, but the exposure seems to be more common from our data with gas, in part because people with gas systems don't tend to have them cleaned and tuned up on a regular basis. So that's one of the other messages that needs to come out. So we work with Suffolk County. Legislator Hahn is here, and she's on a committee in Suffolk County that I work with her on, that resulted in Suffolk County declaring an awareness month. That's one of the other things we'd like to do is get the state to get onto that perhaps for next year. And as I said, there's a couple of policy aspects to this. One is that NYSERD is not collecting the data from all these home energy audits. So we've had 8,000 audits done on Long Island, and I keep asking the question, so how many of them have a positive carbon monoxide result? It's reported, but it's not collected for some reason. We can't get that, or it's collected but not reported. And also there's an income implication to all this. So people who are in lower income are less inclined to have those annual cleanings. They're less inclined, they might buy through COD, less inclined to have the systems cleaned and checked regularly. And the money that's given for people who get assistance for their heating bills specifically does not include, several years ago they changed it, they do not pay for audits or fixing up of the systems or carbon monoxide tests. So I think there's several areas here where we've learned some things, that maybe some policy changes that I would very much look forward to the opportunity to working with either yourself or some of the other elected officials here.
Set up a Center for Advanced Energy at Stony Brook, and they have a policy center. So if there are people that have energy issues, you should use Stony Brook, make an inquiry. You could do it through my office and have them do some research on it. Yes, sir.
It is true that awareness about the home improvement, the NYSERD program, home improvement with Energy Star program, there used to be a lot of work to be done on that. We're doing our part on the East End to try to bring awareness to that. However, we see very little results. This program is free to people who earn $270,000 and less. And also there is low interest loans up to $25,000 that is given by NYSERD. And also to pay back these loans, it's paid back what's called on-bill paying on the LIPA bills that people get. So it's made really easy and it's free for these BPI certified inspectors, auditors to come into the home, but there seems to be very little awareness about it, and a lot more can be done.
There was a point made earlier, we've talked about water quality and we've talked about resiliency in light of the need that became very apparent to us in the wake of Hurricane Sandy. And Senator, you used a phrase earlier, you described the nexus between those two issues, and I think you're exactly right. When we sat around this table a year ago, I think it was Legislator Hahn who observed that resiliency was a buzzword that sort of was at the fore of our minds just a couple months after Hurricane Sandy. And I already note a difference in terms of how much we've doubled back on that issue today. And it's not because we've been able to solve the issue, but you know, life has begun to normalize again, thankfully, for most of us. But I think as we attempt to address a water quality concern and also look at what I would describe as the principal challenge that faces us on a regional, a national, and even an international basis right now, it's going to be our attempts to adapt to the world that's changing around us. There was a headline earlier today that said, you know, when these numbers, it's so boggling you can't even understand it. $100 trillion worth of impacts from climate change when you go out as far as 2100. I don't know what that means. It's too far in the future and it's too big a number. What I do know is that Department of Interior just issued, or rather just closed out grants. Many of you issued letters of support for applications that a lot of us in this room worked on, so thank you for that. But Department of Interior used $100 million to put out there for anyone from nonprofits to local municipalities, state agencies, anyone other than feds, to come in and seek funds for resiliency funding. That $100 million, we won't know, who the winners and the losers are until May. What we do know is that they received over 1,500 applications for that $100 million in the Sandy affected area. There is not only an appetite, but there is a need. And I think as we look forward and we think about what the next generation of environmentalists are going to be faced with dealing in an island economy that has principally, at least from my little corner of the county, a resort driver to our economic engine, we have to address resiliency and we have to do it in a proactive manner. New York Rising is a fantastic program. It continues to help people largely west of us, but that is a reactionary program. And I think one of the challenges as we attempt to address water quality, as we attempt to, picking up on Kevin's point, acknowledge the habitat value of these buffers and the native ecosystems that keep us from being more exposed. What we have to do going forward is have a proactive approach to this. We have to bring funding streams online. We have to use the EPF. We have to carve out funds for resiliency in a greater, more efficient manner than we have at the state level. The feds have skin in the game. It's not enough skin in the game, but they've got hundreds of millions of dollars that add up to billions of dollars that have been allocated. We need the state to get in the game and to fully appreciate the extent to which this is an issue that, even though we're talking about it less around this table a year later, we're going to get hit again. We all know that. We appreciate it. And the only way to maximize the benefit, to leverage the inputs from the federal agencies who are producing new data, is to do it sooner rather than later. The only way to save this money from having to be spent in a reactive way is to spend it proactively for pennies on the dollar. When we look ahead at what DOI, Department of Interior at the federal level is doing, there's going to be a shelf life to the expenditures they're making. The new updated LiDAR data that they're creating, that is going to be useful and critical material, but only for a certain period of time. The extent to which New York State can engage directly and benefit and leverage those federal funds and get these programs launched at the local level, this is a no-brainer. We have to engage the funding sources that are available to us through EPF, through other programs, LWRP, communities that have these programs in place that have already taken initial planning steps at the municipal level. There should be a next step that New York State encourages those communities to go through, so that we say, you've got a comprehensive plan, you've got an LWRP, here's your third step. You need to come up with a coastal resiliency assessment and a coastal resiliency planning program. Here's the blueprint. We don't even have the blueprints on the shelf for this. When municipalities approach New York State at this point and say, we want to do an LWRP, there's a toolkit there. The professionals at the state level turn around, they grab the material off of the shelf and they hand it off to the local planners and elected officials. We need to take that next step so that we can benefit eventually from economies of scale and cost savings over time, as what gets done in one community can be leveraged by another. So thank you very much.
We had a legal settlement with developers after 20 years of suing them successfully and saving around 2,000 acres in around Warbler Woods. We decided for the last 300 acres we would do a legal settlement. So we now have funds in a fund called the Carmen's River Watershed Trust Fund. And we're hoping to leverage this as much as possible and work with the state, beds, and others. So one of our first projects is helping to fund the USGS monitoring sampling station, which they've had to close down for at least a month now. And we're going to be partnering with the town of Brookhaven, but we'd also like to look at expanding, as Adrian requested, some of the EPF funds. So I'll be visiting with you and maybe Senator Gillibrand on that. We're also, as part of our trust fund, we're going to be working with Peter Scully and John with the Pine Barrens Commission for that very problematic northern part of the watershed that's sort of an orphan, and the ATVs are just destroying it. I call this effort know what for the northern watershed, but sort of like, know what, we're going to put a stop to this. So hopefully, we haven't met yet, but we have actually a really creative idea which we haven't shared yet with you. So we'll probably need a little extra funding for that. We are putting an advisory group together too. It's informal, but it will be substantive. As part of this effort, we started in 2008 working with the town of Brookhaven to do something that nobody does. All planning councils, commissions, town planning departments, yada, 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 say that they will plan to carrying capacity. We haven't seen one plan yet come out that directs itself to carrying capacity. We're way beyond our carrying capacity. So we've been inspired by the Woods Hole study that was conducted by Ivan Valliela and Associates and paid for by the Nature Conservancy and the Department of State. They looked at the South Shore estuary and basically said it's way beyond carrying capacity. You can preserve as much land as you want. Of course, anything will help, but basically the damage has been done. For example, we have places like West and Shirley, which Kevin mentioned. So we're developing a program that we've kept sort of under wraps. We've only shared it with 2 politicians. One of them is here today. But to address this in a program that might be a win-win for everyone. And we haven't kept it as big a secret as swan pate, but we're working on this program. But basically, it's a way that we would probably need a little federal and state funding just to get it started. But it looks like, from our discussion so far, it's a win-win for municipalities, for homeowners and businesses with sites who are willing to retrofit or go toward alternative systems. It's certainly a win-win. Well, it appears like it might be a win-win for developers, which would help us really get this program going. So when we're ready to share that, which I hope will be soon, because we have now some assistance from the trust fund, that we will look for actually support from everyone here, but certainly political support. And just finally, as almost part of this, some very good news, since some of you have mentioned the need to go away from sewering and perhaps get some good alternative treatment systems. We have met with the health department, a little consortium, mostly of women. We met with the 2 Walters, and over getting what Dr. Larry Swanson had mentioned and nobody noticed in the first What Are We Going to Do conference, he said at the very end, we must start considering waterless systems. So we have gotten a very positive response from the health department to approve of closed systems, the Clytus Multrum compost, for the Longwood Public Library, which is on the headwaters of the Carmens River. And we're waiting for an okay from the library board. But if that happens, we'll at least have at least 2 demos that the public can visit, and we may be at least a little bit on our way.
I want to ask you about undergrounding electric wire. I see that the new group in town is still going to count on running around with trucks and those cherry buckets and things, and cutting tree limbs down and so forth. But you know, those trees just keep growing and growing, and I think that if you could put some state money into undergrounding of power lines, that would help. I know Fred has worked hard on a couple of projects, Southampton and East Hampton. I hope you continue to work that way.
A transmission line from Southampton to Bridgehampton, and that got undergrounded. The residents agreed to, to pay a surcharge on their LIPA bill in that area to do that, and that got done. And we are seeking funding out in Montauk, the entry to Montauk, to underground some of the power lines there. You know, it's one of those things you try to do a piece when you can do a piece, when you get the opportunity to do it. To do it all at once is literally billions and billions of dollars, and I get a lot of letters, but none of them tell me that they think their utility bill is too low. And so it's a balance of trying to, you know, deal with the economics of it, but when the opportunities present themselves, we do try to do that.
Just a couple of small, but I think reasonable and practical suggestions to make. So when the more tenured state legislators were sitting at this table a few years ago, we came up with a watershed improvement district, which you both passed last year, and for the towns. And I know there's been some discussion about whether that should be expanded for counties. And having had a meeting with a village official this morning, the question also came up of why wouldn't you include the villages also? So when you get this done, we should have watershed improvement district authorizations for village, towns, and counties. Right now, it's only towns, and people talking about doing it, so that's one suggestion. And if you're doing the county bill anyway, it might not be such a bad idea to write it in for towns, counties and villages included, and then everybody's got it. So that's one idea. The second is, you know, at the core of what we need to be doing in a number of these water quality improvement efforts is readying the public and ourselves and our governments for the necessary infrastructure investment strategies that have to be undertaken. And I use my father, who's an 85-year-old a guy, and I don't tell him what I do. He still doesn't understand what I do. But he still loves me, which is key.
He's not alone in that.
I know. And so he read the paper and, with the Steve Ballone story, and he said, you know, that's a really necessary thing to do. I said, yeah, the challenge will be how do you pay for it? And his response was simplistically common, and he basically said, you're going to have to pay for it like you pay for everything else. That matters. So he said, but you can't keep doing what you're doing because you're going to destroy the place. So that was, to the senator's point, how do you get this a long story down into a short soundbite? That was my father's soundbite. So we got to have that conversation, and we have to protect the integrity of dedicated funds that exist, and we probably have to get more.
We've been approached by the Conservancy's representative in Albany about doing this for counties and the water improvement districts. And that draft is completed. We've been working on it with Brian Murphy, the Senator's Counsel. As you know, occasionally doing village attorney work, I don't think it would be that hard to also add in villages to do that either. So we haven't put the bill in yet. We're still working on a draft, so I think we can easily make that modification.
I think in the next number of weeks, as we move through the legislative process on how we're going to deal with the water issue, I think with the county executives initiative, county legislative initiatives locally, we will begin to get people's attention. As a former teacher, repetition, repetition, repetition. And people
That's
will
not the
begin-
Common Core, by the way.
My friend, I can go to one meeting without hearing Common Core.
Well, we have one tomorrow, so I just wanted to get you warmed up.
So I think that's critically important to get the public kind of psyched, and get it in their psyche that this is something that we really need to address. And so on this, go to my friend there about sound bites, that's where the media comes in. And it's for them to be able to address the public and get it in their minds in a very simplistic way, something that's very complicated.
The movie Swan, right? I was going to say something about it, and I said, nah, not in front of this group, etc. But you mentioned it. right off the bat.
I did.
At the beginning of the meeting, and then Peter Scully talked about the science of it. And then we talked about the deer in Suffolk. And I realize invasive species are a big problem, and acknowledge that. However, with the moot swan, if you look at the plan, and the website encourages citizens to have input to this plan. So if you go and you read the plan, from a non-scientist, it's not very convincing why we have to exterminate the moot swan. And what I'm saying here, and maybe not in the most articulate way, is that I'm concerned not only about the science, but public support for the efforts that a lot of the worthwhile efforts that DEC undertakes. And I see this as undercutting and undermining, aspects of the program. So I hope that's taken into consideration. And yes, I did send in my comments to the EC.
Remember what that number was?
38,000.
Wow.
38,000 people.
Many from outside the United States.
I have a lot of relatives abroad. This...
the swans are mute.
We're at the end, so... but it is an important subject, at least in my mind, that we have to address because I see more and more legislation and things that we need to, eliminate this animal, that animal, and we keep going. And all of a sudden, it kind of hits you, or at least it should hit you, that we're playing with balance of nature, and we have a lot of it was open spaces, and now someone mentioned it. We have development that it's encroaching on their habitats. And so we have to find a way. Malcolm actually said something that's really important that we should really think more about. It's not the first person that has said that venison is very important meat. So
we could export all of it to Europe and help the balance of payments.
Well, we could do a lot of things, but I think it's a subject that really is a problem. It's an absolute problem, but we have to start looking at other alternatives rather than the killing modality as the only way of dealing with our problem. I am going to give the final word to Assemblyman Anthony Palumbo.
This is my second or third roundtable, Senator. This is the first one I've done on the environmental side, but they're such a wonderful thing, and I guess since you're giving me the closing statement, I'll give somewhat of a wrapping up type of comment that, of course, I'm following around Assemblyman Thiele and Senator LaValle being just elected in November, but every issue is a local issue. And like I say, my district is essentially the North Fork mirror of Assemblyman Thiele's. And we have such a comprehensive issue, or so many comprehensive issues, from swan pate through deer culling, through food production and environmental protection of the waterways, that these types of forums, in my opinion, that I've seen in just my limited experience here are so valuable to us because you folks are in the trenches. And again, these issues are all local issues. So your input being there on the ground level is absolutely a home run. So I look forward to these for many years to come, and your participation is absolutely crucial. So thank you all, and I certainly look forward to chatting with you in the future.
I want to thank everyone for coming on a Friday. The schedule just didn't work out. We didn't want to bring it further into February with President's Week, Valentine's Day, etc. So thank you for giving us